There's a curious statistic about money in the United States. Millions of people are earning more money than any previous generation, and yet they live under constant financial pressure. According to internal Bank of America data, almost a quarter of couples live paycheck to paycheck. But at the same time, luxury car sales are at record levels. Clothing brands continue to grow, and consumption of high-status products has never been higher. In other words, we are living through a huge contradiction. More and more people are under financial pressure, but more and more people are trying to appear rich. Money has become a performance, a carefully constructed image for others to see. Meanwhile, financial stress grows silently behind the scenes. But here's something interesting. True millionaires report not participating in this game. Many of them go unnoticed, living simply. They drive ordinary cars, they wear simple clothes, they live in quiet neighborhoods. If you met one of them in a cafe or supermarket, you probably wouldn't imagine how much they own, because the distance between appearing rich and being financially secure has never been so great. In fact, for many people, trying to appear rich is exactly what prevents them from building wealth. That's why, paradoxically, appearing poor can be one of the smartest financial strategies there is. And the first reason for this is simple. The simpler your lifestyle, the easier it becomes to build real wealth. One of the biggest reasons why so many people continue to suffer financial pressures is something called lifestyle inflation. Whenever income increases, the standard of living increases along with it. A better apartment, a more expensive car, subscriptions that seem small, but are never canceled. Little by little, each increase in income is absorbed, and the result is that a person earns more, but never feels richer. Take a simple example. SUV rarely costs just $60,000. When you include financing, more expensive insurance, fuel, and maintenance, the total cost can easily exceed $90,000 over a few years. Now, imagine that same money invested. Historically, an index fund linked to the S&P 500 doubles approximately every decade. That is, that expensive car doesn't just cost its price, it also costs the growth that money could have had. This psychological interest even has a name, the Diderot effect. The French philosopher Denis Diderot received an elegant dressing gown as a gift in the 18th century. The problem was that suddenly everything around him began to seem inadequate. His office seemed too simple. His furniture was old, so he began replacing everything to match the new standard. Result, he ended up in debt. The same thing happens today. You buy a new iPhone and your computer seems old. You change cars and your apartment starts to seem small. Your brain recalibrates what it considers normal, and everything below that new standard begins to seem lost. But here's a little spoken truth. Financial freedom doesn't just depend on how much you earn. It depends on how much your life costs. When your lifestyle demands $8,000 a month, you need to constantly hustle to sustain that number. But when your life costs $3,000, something powerful happens. You gain options, because your survival doesn't depend on every immediate decision. Constant financial pressure defeats the quality of decisions. People have accepted the wrong jobs. They work in toxic environments. They make short-term decisions, not because they want to, but because they need the money. Movements like FIRE, financial independence, retire early, show exactly that. When someone manages to consistently save about 50% of their income, financial independence can become possible in about 15 years. It's not magic, it's math. Studies show that most American millionaires drive used cars and avoid luxury brands. Research conducted by Thomas Stanley revealed that the typical millionaire spends less than $400 a year on clothes. They don't try to look rich, they optimize their choices to preserve wealth, not to signal wealth. The second reason why looking poor can be an advantage is simple. It's much cheaper. The United States economy is based on consumption. Approximately 70% of GDP comes from people buying things. This creates enormous cultural pressure to spend constantly. Today, marketing is not just advertising. It has become psychological engineering. Companies hire behavioral scientists to study how to generate desire, manipulate the feeling of scarcity, and create urgency, even when it doesn't exist. Your cell phone still works perfectly, but the new model has a slightly better camera. Suddenly, it feels like you need to upgrade, and the growth of monthly subscriptions is even more subtle. Streaming, services, software, productivity apps, gyms, health apps, each cost $10 or $15 a month. Individually, they seem cheap, but together they can consume hundreds of dollars every month without you realizing it. The buy now, pay later model has also changed the way people spend. Installment plans make a $200 impulse purchase seem like a small $50 a month decision. In practice, we've built an entire infrastructure designed to separate you from your money as efficiently as possible. More than 60% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency without going into debt. The average balance in savings accounts is less than $5,000. Meanwhile, credit card debt has reached record highs, with average interest rates above 20% per year. The problem is that many people confuse income with wealth. Someone who earns $150,000 a year but spends $145,000 may seem successful on the outside, but financially, that person is almost as vulnerable as someone who earns much less. A job loss could be just one step away from financial collapse. Financial institutions profit from debt, companies profit from consumption, and no one benefits from your financial discipline except you. The average American spends approximately $200 a month on non-essential purchases, coffees, impulse buys, and convenience expenses. If that money were redirected to an index fund yielding about 8% per year, it could turn into almost $118,000 in 20 years. If that amount were $500 a month, the total would exceed $295,000. Each dollar represents a choice between immediate gratification and future freedom. Education works similarly. A $2,000 course that increases your earning potential by $10,000 a year can pay for itself in a few months and continue generating returns for many years. Financially successful people see money differently. For them, dollars aren't just for spending, they're resources that can work. Consumption destroys capital. Investment multiplies it. This requires a change of mindset, moving from the question, what can I buy, to what can I build? Investing in skills, health, and income-generating capacity creates a personal return that can multiply over decades. You're not sacrificing by spending less. You are choosing long-term power over short-term pleasure. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this video so far, please consider leaving a like. This really helps the channel and signals to YouTube that you want to see more content like this. Now, let's continue. The third reason is that looking poor attracts the right people into your life. The people around you shape your financial behavior much more than you imagine. Economists call this social pressure to consume. When your social group constantly raises the standard of living, you begin to feel pressure to keep up. Friend groups develop implicit spending norms. If everyone is going to expensive restaurants, splitting $200 bills, or booking budget trips, you end up with two options: keep up with the pace or feel left out. Your brain constantly compares your status to that of those close to you. When your social circle signals success through consumption, living more simply can feel like you're falling behind. This is a powerful psychological dynamic and often exploited by an economy that profits when everyone spends more. Group dynamics create silent financial pressure, something that has been openly mentioned. Someone suggests an expensive restaurant, and suddenly you're spending 3 times more than usual because saying no seems embarrassing. Weddings, bachelor/bachelorette parties, group trips, events that could cost $500 end up turning into $2,000 commitments. Nobody wants to be a person who can't afford it. So many people end up funding experiences they didn't even want, just to maintain relationships that perhaps didn't survive honest financial limits. That's emotional expenditure under social pressure. But when you don't try to look rich, something interesting happens. People who were only attracted by the appearance of status disappear, and what remains are relationships based on real values. These relationships survived based on honesty about projects, choices, and priorities. An authentic identity costs nothing to maintain. An identity based on appearance requires constant investment. Financial boundaries also function as a diagnosis. They reveal who is really on your side and who is only present for what you can offer or appear to represent. The signaling of wealth also creates other risks. Fraud, scams, and social engineering tend to grow in environments of visible wealth. A person who constantly displays luxury goods ends up becoming a target. Identity fraud, manipulation efforts, and even physical security risks increase when financial exposure is high. Silent wealth, on the other hand, acts as protection. Truly wealthy families understand this instinctively. They avoid drawing attention, preserve their privacy, and operate under the radar. Stop trying to appear rich, or simply living discreetly reduces risks in several dimensions while preserving freedom and options. The fourth reason is that you become genuinely satisfied with what you already have. Psychologists have been studying lottery winners for decades, and the results are consistent. After a few months, happiness levels generally return to the initial point. This aspect is called hedonic adaptation. The human brain quickly gets used to new situations. The initial feeling of pleasure generated by a new purchase disappears, and soon the need for a new upgrade arises to recreate that same feeling. Neuroscience explains this. Dopamine responds much more to novelty and anticipation than to permanent possession. That is, the brain is programmed to seek, not necessarily to appreciate what it already has. That's why upgrades stop working. Research on life satisfaction shows something counterintuitive. Gratitude is much more correlated with happiness than increased income beyond basic needs. Studies indicate that, in the United States, after approximately $75,000 per year, additional income increases produce only marginal gains in well-being. What really matters is the psychological relationship you have with what you possess. A mindset of understanding, always focused on what is lacking, creates constant dissatisfaction, regardless of the situation. A mindset of consistent sufficiency, on the other hand, creates dissatisfaction when something is sufficient. Appreciation acts as a shield against manufactured desires. When you are genuinely satisfied, marketing loses much of its power. Experiences also tend to generate more satisfaction and sensitivity than material possessions. A dinner with friends, a road trip, learning a new skill, these experiences create memories and strengthen relationships. Possessions, on the other hand, generally provide momentary pleasure, and then material things fade into the background of routine. When researchers analyze excuses at the end of life, the pattern is clear. People reported regretting what didn't satisfy them. They regretted experiences they postponed, relationships they neglected, and time they sacrificed for things that, in the end, weren't that important. Health, intentionally, autonomy, and appearance consistently appear as central factors for well-being. Consumption relatively appears on this list. Recognizing the constant dependence on novelty allows one to interrupt this cycle. Much of consumption is protected by emotional regulation, anxiety, stress, or insecurity. Identifying these triggers creates space for more conscious decisions. When you realize that your life has truly improved and that it only creates a temporary interval, consumption ceases to be automatic and becomes a strategic choice. Intentionality in lifestyle means that each purchase serves a purpose aligned with real values and not impulsive desires created by algorithms. The fifth reason is that by living more simply, you need much less money to retire. The math of retirement is simpler than the financial industry often makes it seem. The so-called 4% rule suggests that you can withdraw about 4% of your portfolio per year without depleting the money over time. If you need $40,000 a year to live, you will need approximately $1 million invested. If you need $100,000 a year, then the number rises to about $2.5 million. In other words, your spending level directly determines how much you need to accumulate to achieve financial freedom. That's why lifestyle inflation is so dangerous. Each permanent increase in expenses pushes your retirement number to an ever higher level. The FIRE, Financial Independence, Early Retirement community stated that many people are able to retire in their 30s or 40s not because they earn extraordinary gains, but because they maintain a moderate lifestyle while saving negatively. Saving 50% of a $70,000 salary can be more powerful than saving 10% of a $200,000 salary. Meanwhile, Americans carry over $1 trillion in credit card debt, with average interest rates above 20% per year. This is, in practice, a negative investment. You're not making money work for you. You're paying interest that works against you. Every dollar paid in interest could be invested and multiplying over time. The psychological impact is also enormous. Debt generates stress, reduces your options, and often forces people to keep working regardless of the circumstances. High levels of debt trap people in jobs they don't like, in relationships that no longer make sense, and in cities they'd like to leave. Financial freedom becomes impossible when obligations consume all income. There is a spectrum between dependence and independence. Most people work because they need to. Bills cancel that out. Financial independence means that work becomes optional. You can continue working, but the application changes. It ceases to be survival and becomes purpose. The true ultimate asset is the ownership of time. When you control your hours, you control your life. A modest lifestyle dramatically accelerates this transition. The difference between needing $40,000 a year and needing $80,000 a year can represent, specifically, an entire decade of work. The savings rate is more important than income growth. Earning more while spending proportionally more does not create progress. Frugality acts as leverage. It increases the space between income and expenses, and it is precisely in this space that wealth is built. Establishing a low cost of living creates a permanent advantage. Calculate your financial freedom number, the amount of investment needed to make work optional, and notice how that number becomes much more attainable when you're not funding a lifestyle created to impress people who aren't even part of your life. Silent wealth is a long-term competitive advantage that many people never realize. The power of invisible progress is that it accumulates without interruption, without social pressure, without constant comparisons. Real wealth doesn't make a sound. It grows silently in long-term investments, accumulating value year after year, while the spectacle of artificial threats eventually collapses under its own weight. Stopping the attempt to look rich, or more precisely, living discreetly, is not a sacrifice. It's a strategy. If you found this video helpful, please take a second to click the like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to continue learning about finance, investing, and building real wealth, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.